CNN senior data reporter Harry. And Harry, Kate was talking about these new Wall Street Journal polls from key swing states. What do they show?
Yeah, let's take a look at we'll take a broad look here. And this is the aggregate, of course, across these 7 swing states, right? And I want to keep an eye out on the Kennedy factor. So what we see in the 2A is that Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump 47 to 44%. When you include the third parties, both Trump and Biden go down. Kennedy pops up with an 11%, but that 3-point margin stays the same. Kennedy is basically taking from both Joe Biden and Donald Trump a little bit more in some states, from Biden a little bit more from Trump in the other swing states, but overall not much of an impact on the top line. And as Kate was going at, and we've been harping on all morning, look, this is the margin across these 7 key swing states with Kennedy included in the other third-party candidates. Look, there's just a lot of red on this board. Only a little bit of blue down in Wisconsin. But this basically matches what we've been seeing in other polling taken throughout this cycle, and that is that Donald Trump is in significantly better shape at this point in the 2024 cycle than he was at this point in the 2020 cycle.
Very consistent with all the other polling from each and every one of these states that we've seen. Part of the question is why, when you look at the issues and things.
Yeah, why? Why? You know, I like to dig down and look at the why. What is going on? All right, trusted more. Again, this is across all of these key 7 swing states. Look, Donald Trump is trusted more than Joe Biden on basically all the important issues. The economy, inflation, 20-point lead. Immigration, border, 20-point lead. The Israel-Hamas war, 14-point lead. The Russia-Ukraine war, 9-point lead. Protecting democracy well within the margin of error, which I think is something that should really worry that Biden can't, given that he has been harping and Democrats have been harping on this. Just a 1-point advantage. On an abortion, Democrats and Joe Biden have a 12-point advantage. They would love this campaign to be about abortion, but at this particular point, it's about this. And it's about this with perhaps a little bit of this. And all these issues favor Donald Trump.
And look, and you know, the Democrats and President Biden have been running on democracy, and that's a wash right now.
It is a wash, and this is not the only poll that shows. I was looking at Quinnipiac University poll last week, that showed the exact same thing. And it's something that RFK Jr. said to our colleague Aaron Burnett, saying, you know, I'm not really quite sure. Joe Biden may, in fact, be worse at protecting democracy. Turns out a lot of voters really agree on that. One little last thing I'll point out, is the U.S. on the right track or wrong track in presidential elections? Right track, 25%. Average when the president party loses since 1980, 25%.
Looks very much that type of campaign that we've seen before right now. Harry, great to see you. Thank you. Kate?
Let's talk about this. Joining us right now is Mora Gillespie. She's a founder
really don't want to talk about this.
of Blue Stack Strategies and the former press advisor to then Speaker of the House John Boehner, and more recently Adam Kinzinger.
And I thought it was fitting to start out with this video. Let's just start with the top line numbers, and we're gonna watch this again and just kind of break down each part of it. Last year, November, after the poll numbers dipped because of October 7th and the reaction and the support, then you start seeing all this protest. The poll numbers dipped, and they said, "Oh, it's over a year now from the election. The election is 12 months away. We got plenty of time." Then December came around. Election's 11 months away. January, same thing. February, same thing. Now we're in March. I think it's about time. I mean, I thought it was long gone that could be used as an excuse, but at this point, that is completely not the case. And I think you can see it in how they're panicking, with third parties, how they're panicking with their coalition. They're not going to be winning back some progressives, some young people, some people of color, some people in the Arab and Muslim community. They're not going to be winning them back. This is a forever loss of that group. But those that they're trying to get, that's not being effective too. And it's shown in a Wall Street Journal article with poll. I mean, I was trying to get the word poll out. A Wall Street Journal poll just came out. I believe it was Monday or maybe it was Tuesday. It could have been Tuesday. And says Biden is losing in, I think, 6 or 7 of the swing states, or maybe 6 out of 7 of the swing states. And we'll get to those numbers in a little bit. But let's start with the top line numbers. And it is so painful. You can feel the pain through the screen that they have to cover this poll, because this is a poll they can't skip over. Washington Journal poll come out, they can't skip over that. Washington Post poll come out, they can't skip over that. Is it ABC or NBC? One of those that when they come out, they can't skip over. It might be ABC. So there's certain polls that they can't ignored. This is one of them. Morning Joe covered it. All of the stations covered. I got a lot of footage to cover it, and a couple of articles. So let's dive right into the basics of the conversation, and that is the poll numbers. Let's listen.
Great to have you there. Thank you so much, John.
All right, with us now, CNN senior data reporter Harriet. And Harry, Kate was talking about these new Wall Street Journal polls from key swing states. What do they show?
Yeah, let's take a look at we'll take a broad look here. And this is the aggregate, of course, across these 7 swing states, right? And I want to keep an...
So let's stop here at this number. And maybe I'll use this so the line won't come up on the screen. Swing state choice for Biden. And if you look small across there, it says across Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now, off the top of my head, I know RFK is on the ballot in North Carolina already. Is it another one? It might be Arizona is another one that he's on. But when they say this is the aggregate, when they took all of those polls just from those states, and this is the margin of difference, 47 to 43. And then when you see on the right side of that, it says with third parties, the margin is the same. They both get a lesser share of the overall vote, but the margin is still 3%, which effectively means in this poll, RFK in or out, Biden is going to lose. In or out. And that's essentially also reflects how what they say in this clip, Kennedy, RFK takes from both sides. He takes from some in one state, he takes from other in another state, takes evenly in another state. This is a clear piece of evidence in support of that.
Keep an eye out on the Kennedy factor. So what we see in the two-way is that Joe Biden is trailing Donald Trump 47 to 44%. When you include the third parties, both Trump and Biden go down. Kennedy pops up with an 11%, but that 3-point margin stays the same. Kennedy is basically taking from both Joe Biden and Donald Trump a little bit more in some states, from Biden a little bit more from Trump in the other swing states, but overall not much of an impact on the top line. And as Kate was going at, and we've been harping on all morning, look, this is the...
Look at this here. So we saw the aggregate. Now we're looking at each individual state. And it's so funny how in other coverage of this, other segments on other segments I've seen, they describe this as, they don't say Trump is winning 6 out of the 7 swing states. They go, Wall Street Journal poll shows that this is a very tight race. That's the headline. With these numbers, denial. That's called denial. But Arizona, 5 points. Nevada, 4 points. And like I said, Nevada is the other state that, if I didn't say that earlier, I can't remember which state I said. Nevada is one of the states that RFK Jr. is already on. Georgia, 3%. PA, 3%. Wisconsin, 3%. Michigan, 2%. North Carolina, 8%. North Carolina, 8%. If I'm not mistaken, North Carolina is the state. Did they win last time? Let me see what he says here. Let's get back to the video. Maybe he addresses it.
The margin across these 7 key swing states, with Kennedy included in the other third-party candidates. Look, there's just a lot of red on this board. Only a little bit of blue down in Wisconsin. But this basically matches what we've been seeing in other polling taken throughout this cycle, and that is that Donald Trump is in significantly better shape at this point in the 2024 cycle than he was at this point in the 2020 cycle.
Very consistent with all the other polling from each and every one of these states that we've seen. Part of the question is why, when you look at the issues and things.
Yeah, why? Why?
So they're going to go into why, and this is where it's going to get really devastating for Joe Biden. But you heard what he said. He said this is very consistent with many polls that have been coming out. Very consistent. So this is not an outlier. But wait till you get to the response of, I think it's Jill Biden when I get to the video with that has Jill Biden in it. Jill, Jill, the wife, where they just kind of just say, we wait till we get closer to the election. Like when? The day before? Are you guys still going to be saying this the day before? Wait till people actually tune in. But look at the fear on his face. Look at the horror. That word is so funny to me. Look at the horror, especially when Nick says it, of this, his face. These numbers are not changing. All of the virtue signaling sort of things that Biden is supposedly doing, canceling more debt, a student loan debt, doing all of these sort of small things in order to get something. The Trump card, and forgive the pun, the Trump card is genocide. But let's look at what people are saying are the most important issues and who is doing better on those issues between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Let's look.
Why? You know, I like to dig down and look at the why. What is going on? All right, trusted more. Again, this is across all of these key 7 swing states. Look, Donald Trump is trusted more than Joe Biden on basically all the important issues. The economy, inflation, 20-point lead. Immigration, border, 20-point lead. The Israel-Hamas war, 14-point lead. The Russia-Ukraine war, 9-point lead. Protecting democracy well within the margin of error, which I think is something that should really worry the Biden camp, given that he has been harping and Democrats have been harping on this. Just a 1-point advantage. On an abortion, Democrats and Joe Biden have a 12-point.
So this graph right here really speaks to the graphic that we have. This graph right here speaks to this. Trump will beat Biden. Because you see the swing states, right? And you go, they ask the question, well, why? They're answering the question right here. Well, why isn't it going up? Because all of the top areas that people say are the top issues that they're voting on, Trump is winning by a lot. Economy, and whether or not it's people's reality is their reality. So whether or not Trump is good on these issues is really irrelevant. Is that people see him better than Joe Biden. This is the lesser of two evils that they have trained the constituency to be, and now they're saying Trump is the lesser of evil. And everybody's like, with their mouths dropped open. This poll has sent shockwaves. Everybody's covering it. Bunch of news articles. Just Google it. Bunch of news articles and content has been made. But I paused it here so we can go by item. So inflation and economy, 20 plus. You hear the plus part? That really is like in past historically on that category alone, it's all that's a wrap. If you're losing on the economy point, that's a wrap. Typically, when it's talking about an incumbent, if we're not at war, now we're at war, so that it's a little bit more added to what people are weighing besides the economy. And this next issue, which is an issue, but not from the perspective that both parties are talking about it, that is an issue. This is more a humanitarian issue, not a we need to shut the border down issue. And it's been sensationalized by conservatives. They do this every election year, and I don't understand how white people haven't caught up to this shit, because it's marketed to white people, white Americans. Every year is crime. Every election year is crime. Every election year is abortion. You get what I'm saying? It's all the same issues every time. But anyway, I'm digress. Anyway, look at this. Here is his problem here. This third category is where Joe Biden is really, to me, is the biggest issue in his coalition. It's because the economy and inflation, actually, let me say it a different way. The reason I think Israel-Hamas war is because is a bigger deal out of all of these for him. It's the hardest to fix because Trump is winning 14 points, but on top of that, his own base disagrees with him. Trump's base agrees with him on Israel. You get what I'm saying? Trump's base agrees with him. They're all Zionists or Zionist supporters or Zionist adjacent, meaning they're okay. They don't really care either way. Joe Biden supporters don't support him, and they're going to get to that. I think he has a support within Democrats is in the 30 percentile. I have to get the exact number. Then on the Russia-Ukraine war, he's losing on that too. But guess what he's winning on? He's winning on protecting democracy. Now let's go. Now you see the areas where Democrats and all of cable news outlets keep pushing these segments. You keep saying, why do they keep talking about democracy and abortion? Have you noticed the segments? They're pulling abortion segments out of the air. They're finding a new issue to talk about abortion because that is literally the only issue that they're winning on. Protecting democracy is not even worthy because that's a 1%, and that's well within the margin of error. And you know how sad it is? You know how deflating it must be to like a Rachel Maddow, to like a Adam Silver. You know how deflating it must be to look at a poll that says, Nancy Pelosi, to look at a poll that says, when it comes to protecting democracy, Joe Biden beats Trump by 1%. After you guys have impeached him, after investigation after investigation, after your PR team known as the cable news outlets, MSNBC, CNN, wall-to-wall coverage from sun up to sundown, to only produce a 1% advantage. That's essentially an F in your propaganda report card. That's an F. 1%? That's your cornerstone thing that he's gonna disrupt democracy. How are you gonna go hard at that? But that's what they're going hard at. Joe Biden's gonna lose. Joe Biden is gonna lose if they continue this way without a different strategy. I mean, like, barring him coming out saying, I'm granting everybody Medicare for all right now overnight, and then saying I'm wiping out through the Higher Education Act, wiping out all student debt, him going, I'm, raising minimum wage to $35. Like, if he did those three things, yeah, he's going to get reelected. But barring something like that or some sort of combination of that, this guy's a dead man walking. Dead man walking. Actually, let's look at some comments. Some people making some funny comments here. It's an F in their propaganda report card, but they got get a gold star for effort. Exactly. But is it absolutely an F? And it absolutely has to be deflating considering the amount of time and energy and money they have put into selling that he is tearing down democracy. You have a trial going on right now, or that they're trying to push in Atlanta. That's the one in Atlanta with Fannie Willis that they're trying to push. They're pushing that. This is telling you people not buying that shit. Yet they're still pushing it. Spending our taxpayer money and resources to push something that obviously the public does not buy. Let's continue. There's a couple of more bullet points here.
Point advantage. They would love this campaign to be about abortion, but at this particular point, it's about this and it's about this with perhaps a little bit of this, and all these issues favor Donald Trump.
And look, and you know, the Democrats and President Biden have been running on democracy, and that's a wash right now.
It is a wash, and this is not the only poll that shows. I was looking at Quinnipiac University poll last week, excuse me, that showed the exact same thing. And it's something that RFK Jr. said to our colleague Aaron Burnett, saying, you know, I'm not really quite sure. Joe Biden may, in fact, be worse at protecting democracy. Turns out a lot of voters really agree on that. One little last thing I'll point out is the U.S. on the right track or wrong track in presidential elections. Right track, 25%. Average when the president party loses since 1980, 25%.
The right track, this means 25% of people believe we're on the right track. 3 out of every 10 people believe we're on the right track. How is that? That's essentially the billionaire class, a billionaire and billion. That's literally what that is almost, maybe a little bit more. And then they have the number average when a president loses. Where are they at on this? And it's 25%. Joe Biden will lose to Donald Trump. So Dana Bash also covers this. Like I said, there's multiple outlets that cover this. On the Dana Bash show, Inside Politics, they talk about Biden only being up on that question 1%. They kind of talk a little bit more about that. And more swing state details. And they also talk about how he's winning another key category, which is people's views on both presidencies. Like we're basically coming to the end of a Biden presidency and we've been through the Trump. Which one was better? So let's listen as they cover this. And like I said, both of these segments, there is a very somber tone that they take because this is a disaster here. Let's listen. Dana Bash, Inside Politics.
People who you talk to at Biden events want solutions. Let's talk about a new Wall Street Journal poll, which comes up with a lot of the very important issues that voters are likely to go to the polls about and ranks them when it comes to Trump versus Biden. The economy, Trump is up by 20. Immigration, not surprisingly, Trump is up by 20. Abortion, plus 12. Protecting democracy.
Shocking.
Biden, is it shocking? Because it's only plus 1. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking that he is only up by plus 1 against a guy who tried to overthrow democracy very violently on January 6th. And this is something that Democrats have been hitting. Biden has given several speeches on this. They see this as a centerpiece of their efforts to get moderate voters, independent voters, suburban women voters, some of those Nikki Haley voters as well. And the idea that Biden is only up by 1, I think is fairly shocking. The other number is not too shocking, right? You think about the economy, you talk to voters, they do sincerely believe that the economy was better under Donald.
I'm going to come back to that last point she made, but going back to the first point, that it is absolutely shocking. And she's in media. She's been in these conversations, these roundtable panels where they're pontificating on how much that he's going to destroy democracy in the January 6th and overthrowing and all of that. She's been there. And that was the first thing she was like, that is shocking. That is absolutely shocking. So I'm going to rewind in 30 seconds. So the second point we'll talk about, but the same point, we don't need to go over the point we made because the same poll, this poll numbers here we already talked about. So let's play it again.
Very violently on January 6th. And this is something that Democrats have been hitting. Biden has given several speeches on this. They see this as a centerpiece of their efforts to get moderate voters, independent voters, suburban women voters, some of those Nikki Haley voters as well. And the idea that Biden is only up by 1, I think is fairly shocking. The other number is not too shocking.
So I'm going to rewind it just a little bit.
Events want solutions. Let's talk about a new Wall Street Journal poll, which comes up with a lot of the very important issues that voters are likely to go to the polls about and ranks them when it comes to Trump versus Biden. The economy, Trump is up by 20. Immigration, not surprisingly, Trump is up by 20. Abortion, plus 12. Protecting democracy.
Shocking.
Well, is it shocking? Because it's only
Yes,
+1. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
what you mean?
shocking.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's shocking that he is only up by
Yeah.
+1 against a guy who tried to overthrow democracy very violently on January 6th. And this is something that Democrats have been hitting. Biden has given several speeches on this. They see this as a centerpiece of their efforts to get moderate voters, independent voters, suburban women voters, some of those Nikki Haley voters as well. And the idea that Biden is only up by 1, I think, is fairly shocking. The other number is not too shocking, right? You think about the economy, you talk to voters, they do sincerely believe that the economy was better under Donald Trump. And this is for decades. I think most voters have thought that Republicans more generally were better on the economy. And so, but that Democratic number, who's better with supporting democracy is pretty shocking.
Well, and it's alarming too, because it's a central tenet of the Biden campaign is protecting democracy. That is how he launched his re-election bid. And so that's what they're banking on in addition to abortion. So if economy and immigration continue to stack so high, then that also requires, the campaign to try to frame those issues.
Let's look at some of the battleground states that the Wall Street Journal polled. North Carolina, Trump is up by 6. Arizona, Trump is up. Nevada, Trump is up by 4. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia.
This is awful for him. Like, okay, so I think he could, like Georgia, he has to win Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Those are must wins, I know for sure. It could be North Carolina too, but I know for sure Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, a Democrat cannot win without winning those 3 states. I believe Nevada, he has to win. Georgia and Arizona, I don't believe he has to win. In North Carolina, I'm not sure, but this is pretty steady the last several months, because I remember reporting on something near New Year's or something like that, where the poll numbers were very similar to this over the same amount of states, 6 out of 7 states. It's not looking good for Biden. Let's get back to the video.
Obviously, you see it goes in descending order. Wisconsin, where Trump was yesterday, tied.
Right. And if you keep looking at that poll, 51% of people across those states have been a positive view of how Trump governed as president.
Yeah, we have that. Let's put that up. Let's put that up.
Yeah, that is what the Biden campaign is fighting against. And they've got the rest of.
Look at that. Joe Biden, I'm sorry, job Donald Trump did as president. This Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, I said Washington, Wall Street Journal poll of the 7 states. So this is just of the 7 states. Of those 7 states, job Donald Trump did, it's a 51% approval. This is not good for Joe Biden.
Rest of the year to try to change this, but there is a preponderance of views in the electorate that things were better when Trump was president. And every day, with what you see the Biden campaign doing, especially on social media, literally flashing back 4 years ago and saying, remember this COVID press conference? Remember this thing that didn't work out? Remember this Trump statement? They're trying to do that. I'm not sure it's reaching the sort of voters who skip midterms, skip specials, who vote in every election. I'm not sure it's reaching them. That is their argument. Literally, remember what happened here 4 years ago.
And it's not just on social media.
Yeah.
We're hearing more from senior members of the Biden administration, including the First Lady. Listen to what she said this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming.
Here goes the Jill Biden clip that I mentioned earlier. This is it. It's a clip within the clip. So let's listen close.
That is their argument. Literally, remember what happened here 4 years ago.
And it's not just on social media.
Yeah.
We're hearing more from senior members of the Biden administration, including the First Lady. Listen to what she said this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's not losing in all the battleground states. He's coming up, and he's even or doing better. So you know what? Once people start to focus in and they
Just wait
see
and
their
see.
2 choices, it's obvious that Joe will win this election.
You hear that a lot from campaign officials when it comes to these polling numbers. Wait until we get closer. What does it really mean now? Even the way that he brings in surrogates, former President Barack Obama really isn't expected to play in until after Labor Day. So their sights are certainly set on September, October, when they expect voters are going to be paying more attention. But in the meantime, it's all about messaging and reminding. and seeing where that gets them.
I just want to, before we move on to a different part of our conversation, look at crime, because that really.
She goes into a talk about crime and pointing out how Republicans are saying crime is up when it's actually down. It's funny how CNN, who typically participates in fear-mongering about crime being up when it's down, it's not the first time this happened. This happens all the time. But anyway, so there's Dana Bash. I do want to get to this headline from this article that kind of inserted at this point, and I got a couple of snippets. Let's read the snippets first before I determine if we're going to read the entire article. Democrats fear Israel-Hamas war could cost them in November. Here is the part where we're going to start talking about what's behind the numbers. So I wanted to kind of set a foundation of just the numbers and talking about how awful they are and historically awful they are. Now let's kind of start pivoting into what's behind the number, at least his base. When we're talking about his base, because what's troubling Biden that's not troubling Trump is that Trump's base is with him. Biden's base is not with him. That's what's troubling him. Now, let's read this snippet from the article, and the headline reads, Democrats fear Israel-Hamas war could cost them in November. So I believe this article talks about how down ballot are also worried about losing because the top of the ticket is Joe Biden is doing so poorly. So let's read. This is pretty sad, the Democrats, but it's well-deserved. Democrats are fearful that Israel's war in Gaza is turning into a major political liability for President Biden and candidates down ballot, and one that could get worse if it rages on into the summer and attention turns to his matchup with former President Trump. Biden is under increasing pressure from the Democratic lawmakers over the worsening conditions in Gaza, growing fatalities, and Israel's likely invasion of the southern city of Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering. Adding to those issues, Americans are increasingly disapproving of Israelis' action. It's more than over 50%. The last time I looked at a poll, I think it was around 56% disapprove of supplying money to Israel and weapons. They also disapprove of Israel, the way Israel is executing this military campaign, this genocide. I'll read this again. Adding to those issues, Americans are increasingly disapproving of Israel's actions. This has created a political headache for Democrats who are pushing the party to unite behind Biden and leading to concerns the issue could rear its head on the biggest stage in November. Of course. Of course. Yet you do nothing. You could save democracy, according to you, by pivoting, by doing something different to consolidate your base, but you refuse. Let's continue. Here's a quote from the article. It's massive. If this war keeps going on, then it will continue to be a major problem, end quote. One House Democrat told The Hill. Another quote, the sooner Biden can break from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a major way, then the better off he will be politically. This line right here, this last sentence, speaks to this bogus story they just put out, the White House, saying that Biden is calling for a ceasefire. That bogus story we just covered, that's what that line speaks to. It's not just the progressives who are angry about the U.S. support of the Gaza operation. It's now broader than that, and that is true. One of the clips are going to talk about how this is not just Arabs anymore. This is not just progressives. It's literally cutting across the board. Another quote from the article, quote, "I fear what the DNC in Chicago could look like." And I believe he's talking about the DNC convention. House Democrat added, referring to the Democrats' quadrennial convention in late August. And that reminds me, we have to start fundraising for that to try to get RBN members down there to cover that down there with Kit. Kit is down in Chicago, so we got a home base to kind of report to when we get there. Continuing, the outrage towards Biden over his handling of the war has been visible through protests following him around the country and through organized boycotts of him at the ballot box. This is what's putting fear. They're seeing the protests, and it's not stopping, and it's everywhere he goes. And then, and the ballot box, just like what Wisconsin was the latest one, 47,000 votes when they were only shooting for 20,000. They more than doubled the uncommitted vote, the abandoned Biden vote, whatever you want to call it. It was called uninstructed in Wisconsin. To continue with the article, last week he was interrupted during 2 campaign stops, one in Raleigh, North Carolina, and one in New York City. I believe it was the Raleigh one that Nick and I covered, when he was alongside former presidents, or maybe that was me. Yeah, the fundraiser they're talking about here. Presidents Obama and Clinton for a major donor event. And groups such as Abandon Biden and Our Revolution have organized efforts in states with high concentrations of Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and young people, including Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, to encourage people to write uncommitted or Gaza on their ballots to send a message to Biden ahead of November. A lot of people don't talk about North Carolina, which he's losing in by 8 points, according to the Wall Street Journal poll, 85 or close to 85,000 votes. Around 85,000 votes. I'll say it there. Could be more. Around 85,000 votes uncommitted in North Carolina.